He didn't inherit a fortune, he built it from the ground up. Today, Tony Elumelu is one of Africa's most influential billionaires, a banking mogul, philanthropist, in the face of economic transformation. But his journey to unimaginable wealth wasn't handed to him. It was earned through bold moves, sharp strategy, and an unshakable belief in African potential. So how did he do it? How did a young man from Nigeria rise to become filthy rich, commanding boardrooms, transforming industries, and inspiring an entire continent? This 2025 documentary takes you deep into the life, mindset, and money moves of a man who didn't just chase success, he redefined it. Stay tuned, because Tony Elumelu's story isn't just about wealth, it's about power, purpose, and the legacy of a self-made empire. Let's talk about Nigerian billionaires, but not just any billionaire. We're talking about Tony Elumelu. This man isn't just rich, he's legendary. Known as the Nigerian cowboy of banking, Tony's story is so incredible that Harvard Business School had to make it a full-blown case study. And when Harvard puts your name in ink, you know it's serious. So, stick around, because what you're about to hear is the rise of a man who went from being a regular salesman to taking over a failing bank, reviving Nigeria's biggest hotel, and eventually building one of the largest business empires in all of Africa. Born on March 22, 1963, Tony Elumelu came up in the city of Jos, tucked in northern Nigeria, a region that also raised powerhouse names like Aliko Dangote and Rabiu Abdul-Samad. Tony grew up in a modest household with 4 siblings. His family wasn't wealthy, but they made just enough to ensure their kids had an education, and that made all the difference. He began school at St. Patrick's Primary School in Jos, a well-known school in the area, but for high school, Tony had to travel south to Federal Government College Warri in Delta State, his home state. That move would eventually set the stage for everything to come. And trust me, this is just the beginning. The way he turned one dying institution after another into a multi-billion-dollar empire, that part will blow your mind. Don't scroll away, his story gets even better. This next chapter in Tony Elumelu's story is where things start to shift and fast. Choosing to go to high school in southern Nigeria gave young Tony something invaluable: perspective. That move not only opened his eyes to a new way of life, it sparked a hunger for more, for knowledge, for growth. So after graduating, Tony set his sights on the Middle Belt, where he was accepted to study economics at Ambrose Alley University, back then known as Bendel State University, in Edo State. He didn't graduate top of his class, he earned a lower second-class degree. But Tony wasn't the type to let a grade define his future. He leveled up, went on to get his master's in economics from the University of Lagos, and kept his eyes on the bigger picture. Now here's where it gets real. Like every Nigerian grad, Tony joined the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, and landed a spot at Union Bank, one of Nigeria's major commercial banks. This was his first real taste of the banking world, and he was hooked. The suits, the numbers, the rhythm of the finance world, it lit a fire in him. But just as quickly as it started, it ended. His one-year service wrapped up, and Union Bank didn't keep him on. No job offers, no next step, just the door. For most people, that would have been a full stop, but not Tony. He didn't let rejection write his story. He took the hit, picked himself up, and kept pushing forward. Because dreamers, they don't quit. And Tony, he was just getting started. Stick with me, because what comes next is the part where the underdog starts climbing. When the doors of banking wouldn't open, Tony Elumelu didn't wait around. He pivoted. With no offers from the big-name banks, he took a job most people would overlook. He became a copier salesman, yes, knocking on office doors, selling printers and photocopiers to anyone who'd listen. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't part of the plan, but it paid the bills and taught him the art of the hustle. Tony once said he was just like thousands of other young Nigerian grads back then, hungry, ambitious, and chasing success with everything they had. But what made him different was what happened next. One day, All States Trust Bank, a rising name in the commercial banking scene, announced they were hiring, but not just anyone. They were looking for young graduates, the best of the best. And right there in bold print was the catch: only applicants with an upper second-class degree or higher need apply. Tony didn't have that. His undergrad results didn't meet the cut. For many, that would have been the end of the story, but not for him. He knew this was it, his shot to finally break into the banking industry, the world he truly wanted to be in. He could have played it safe. Instead, he grabbed the application, ignored the rule, and applied anyway. He wasn't about to let one technicality stop him from chasing what he knew in his gut was meant for him. Because sometimes the rules weren't written for people who think outside outside the box. And Tony? He was never the type to follow a script. Stick with me because what happens next proves that bold moves create legends. But here's where Tony Elumelu's story takes a real turn. When he sat down to write that cover letter for Allstate's Trust Bank, he knew the odds were stacked against him. He didn't meet the academic requirement, they made that crystal clear. But instead of backing down, Tony leaned in. He owned it. Right there in his letter, he admitted he didn't meet the qualifications. Then he wrote the words that would change everything. Even though I don't meet the requirements, if you give me a chance, I'll prove myself. It was bold, unconventional, and exactly what made him stand out. He sent it in thinking, why not try? And against all expectations, the bank responded with an invitation. Tony was in the mix, competing with hundreds of other sharp, qualified graduates. But this time, he wasn't selling copiers. He was finally on the path he'd always dreamed of. And guess what? He didn't just land the job, he made history. That role at Allstate's Trust Bank became the launchpad for everything. Tony understood what he had, a once-in-a-lifetime shot, and he wasn't going to waste a second of it. Every day he hustled like he had something to prove, because he did. And the chairman of the bank, the same man who had read that honest, gutsy cover letter, Tony was determined to make him proud, and he did fast. In just 12 months, Tony rocketed from data analyst to branch manager, a leap unheard of in Nigerian banking at the time. He was only 27 years old. That kind of career jump, it wasn't luck. It was grit, strategy, and the mindset of someone who refuses to wait for permission. And trust me, this was just the beginning. What Tony does next, it reshapes the entire banking industry. As Tony settled into his role as branch manager, he made sure to thank the bosses who took a chance on him. Their faith in him paid off. He worked tirelessly, and they noticed. Soon enough, his hard work earned him even bigger opportunities. But what came next? That was when he really began to set records in the Nigerian banking world. In 1997, at just 34 years old, Tony took a bold step. He walked away from Allstate's Trust Bank and led a team of ambitious, forward-thinking professionals to acquire a struggling institution known as Crystal Bank, later to be rebranded as Standard Trust Bank. Back then, the bank was on the brink of collapse, and many believed they were simply unloading a sinking ship. But Tony saw potential where others saw failure. He didn't just buy a failing bank, he bought a golden opportunity. And so, with the entire future of Standard Trust Bank, STB, in his hands, Tony didn't hesitate. He put his leadership skills to work and quickly set out to turn the bank around. In fact, he put together an ambitious three-tiered strategy to reshape STB, revitalize the struggling bank, and restore profitability. Elevate STB into one of Nigeria's top 10 financial institutions within 7 years. Push STB to become one of Nigeria's top 3 banks by the 10th year. It was an aggressive plan, and on the surface it seemed almost impossible. But Tony, with his vision and determination, wasn't going to settle for anything less than success. And boy, did he deliver. Within just 7 months, Tony and his team pulled off the unimaginable. They skyrocketed the bank's revenue from a mere 6.49 million naira to a staggering 473 million naira. This wasn't luck. This was the result of Tony's unparalleled leadership, his team's relentless drive, and their deep understanding of what it takes to make something not just survive, but thrive. The banking world took notice. At the time, Nigeria had over 120 commercial banks, and the industry was booming thanks to deregulation. But it was Tony and his team at STB who made the boldest move, and they weren't just surviving, they were dominating. This is just the beginning of Tony's journey to build one of Africa's largest business empires. So you're probably wondering what happened to Standard Trust Bank? Where is it now? Well, here's where things get even more epic. After Tony Elumelu took over STB in 1997, it didn't just recover, it skyrocketed. By the year 2000, the bank was not only stable, but thriving. Fast forward to 2004, and STB had already cracked the top 10 banks in Nigeria, smashing its second major goal well ahead of schedule. But Tony wasn't done yet. In 2005, he pulled off one of the biggest financial power moves in African history. STB merged with United Bank for Africa, UBA, in what would become the largest bank merger in sub-Saharan Africa at the time. Just like that, Tony wasn't just leading a top 10 bank anymore. He was now at the helm of one of the top 3 financial giants in Nigeria. And guess what? He saw it coming. Before the merger even took place, Tony went back to school, Harvard Business School, to be exact, where he enrolled in their elite advanced management program. He wanted to sharpen his leadership edge, knowing full well that this merger was going to be a game changer. He wasn't just preparing to lead a bank, he was preparing to lead a legacy. And once again, with one mountain conquered, Tony looked to climb even higher. Now in control of the newly merged UBA, he rolled out a brand new 3-tier strategy this time, with an even bigger vision. If Nigeria was the proving ground, Africa and the world were now the stage. His new plan? Expand across Africa, go global, transform UBA into a Pan-African powerhouse. Tony made it clear, playing small was never an option. In his own words, the secret sauce wasn't just in goal setting, it was in stretching the limits. Every win gave him and his team the adrenaline to chase the next, and each milestone lit the fire for the one after. Before they knew it, all three phases would be knocked out and usually way ahead of schedule. That's the Tony Elumelu way. Big vision, bold execution, and no finish line in sight. And trust me, the best part of this story, still to come. Stick around, you won't believe how far he takes it next. Let me paint you a picture of just how far Tony Elumelu's ambition has reached. Today, United Bank for Africa, UBA, is no longer just a Nigerian success story, it's a full-blown Pan-African and global banking force. With branches in over 20 African countries and international offices in London, Paris, and New York, UBA holds a unique title, the only African bank operating in the United States. That's not just growth, it's dominance. But in 2010, something major happened. A new regulation from Nigeria's central bank capped bank CEO terms at 10 years. And Tony, who had already been leading UBA to new heights, was required to step down from his executive role. Some might have seen that as a setback. Tony, he saw it as an open door. Rather than dwell on what he couldn't control, he pivoted. He said that change pushed him to dream even bigger and chase new ventures. Of course, he didn't walk away completely. Tony still chairs the bank's board as its largest individual shareholder, owning a hefty 7% of the company. But his next chapter, even more daring. He launched Heirs Holdings, a family-owned investment company with one goal: build a cross-sector empire. From energy to agriculture and insurance to healthcare, Tony started planting flags everywhere. But one of his boldest and most dramatic moves came in the world of hospitality. Enter the Transcorp Hilton Hotel in Abuja, one of the most iconic hotels in Africa. And the way he took control of it, that's where the plot thickens. At the center of it all was Femi Otedola, another Nigerian billionaire. Back in the UBA days, Tony had turned to Otedola for support during the bank's major acquisition phase. Otedola came through, purchasing around $20 million in shares. Later, those shares increased in value. And while Otedola was ready to sell, Tony convinced him to hold on, promising even greater things ahead. By 2007, Otedola had become chairman of Transcorp, holding 5% of the company. But behind the scenes, Tony was quietly buying up shares, slowly increasing his influence. Then came 2008. Otedola hit a rough financial patch, and Tony swooped in, buying up his UBA stock and his holdings in the African Finance Corporation. Here's where it gets spicy. Otedola was approached with an offer from a group claiming to represent an American company interested in his Transcorp shares. He agreed to sell, but after the dust settled, he discovered something shocking. The American firm wasn't American at all. It was Tony Elumelu. Now that's a power move. That jaw-dropping revelation, it led to Femi Otedola stepping down as chairman of the Transcorp Hilton. And just like that, Tony Elumelu made his full takeover official. Today, he sits at the helm of the Transcorp Group, steering one of Nigeria's most iconic brands into the future. But Tony's story doesn't stop at boardrooms and billion-dollar takeovers. In 2010, he shifted gears from profit to purpose and launched the Tony Elumelu Foundation. The mission? Empower Africa's next generation of entrepreneurs with funding, mentorship, and the kind of support he never had when he was just starting out. His philanthropic approach is rooted in what he calls Africapitalism, a bold belief that Africa's private sector holds the keys to long-term prosperity. Not aid, not handouts, but opportunity, innovation, and business ownership driven by Africans for Africans. And so far, he's putting his money where his mouth is. Over 20,000 young entrepreneurs across the continent have received support. A whopping $100 million in funding has been dispersed, and more than 1.5 million Africans have connected with the foundation through its digital platform. But Tony's not just a boardroom genius, he's also living the life that reflects his success. At 61, he's built a net worth of over $700 million. His garage, packed with luxury cars, his Lagos mansion in Ikoyi, straight out of an architectural dream, his private jet, a Dassault Falcon 7X, worth nearly $60 million, one of the most elite in Nigeria. And while most of us stream Afro beats on Spotify or shell out for concert tickets, Tony, he just hires the artist to come perform live at his house. Word is he loves music and parties so much that Spotify even made him his own custom playlist. Still, with all the wealth, influence, and power, there's one thing Tony Elumelu says he cherishes more than all of it: his family. Tony Elumelu isn't just a business icon, he's also a proud father of 5, including a set of triplet daughters, all with his wife and longtime partner, Vivian Owl, whom he married back in 1993. Behind the scenes of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, Tony is building something far bigger than just a business empire. He's laying the foundation for a lasting family legacy. Now, when people ask him how he managed to rise so fast, achieve so much, and build an empire from scratch, he keeps it real. Tony credits it all to 2 things: hard work and luck. Yeah, luck. In his words, he's lived the kind of life that proves even the hardest hustle sometimes just needs that one open door. Or in his case, one decision from a CEO who chose to look past his resume and give him a shot. If that bank chairman hadn't noticed his cover letter, if he hadn't taken that chance, things could have gone very differently. And that's the power of showing up ready, even when the odds aren't in your favor. Tony Elumelu is living proof that luck favors the prepared, and when preparation meets opportunity, legacy is born.